Alright guys, Monday night, welcome back to the Taj Mahal. It's a hot one out here tonight, almost 90 and high humidity. But we're going to do a power hour out here at least tonight, maybe a power hour or two. So I'm not quite sure what we're going to do yet. We'll go through the table and figure out what parts we can continue to put on the engine block. I know I need to install the timing gears, the timing gear set at some point, and just do a few checks on that. So that's one thing I can do. I have a few other parts I could probably put on, like the spin-on oil filter adapter could probably go on. I put on some small parts last night after hours, let's say. I came out and snuck out in the garage and put the oil pressure relief valve on here, so we cleaned that up and just stuck that in the and basically just trying to fill up holes. So we'll put that where it was supposed to go. You may have noticed from my last video we put a couple plugs in. So the engine oil drain plug, this is actually an oil temperature gauge, or a lead for it anyway, or a sensor for it. So we've got that in there. So we may get a new one of those. I'm not sure if that actually leaks or not. So that is the original to the car. These cars didn't come equipped with that, but the previous owner, I guess, wanted to know the temperature of his oil. Again, I think this car has a little bit of a racing background, a racing history, so there's a few little mods that are done to this car that normally wouldn't have been done. Alright, let's go through the table and figure out what we want to do for tonight. Alright, little wins tonight. This is the alternator bracket that we're going to put back on the side of the block. So I've just got the fasteners soaking in a little bit of mineral spirits. We'll put them on a wire wheel and clean them up, and new lock washers, and we'll attach that to the block. So one of the things I never really focus on is how much time I spend actually cleaning up the old fasteners. And I thought I'd just take a quick moment to show you the difference between the cleaned up and the as per taken off the car edition. So obviously here is a as per taken off the car. Still got some paint on it, lots of rust. This is already being degreased. So that's what it looks like when it comes off the car. And after a little bit of time spent with a brass wire brush, that's what they look like going back on the car. So I know a lot of guys will buy new fasteners for the car, and I've been guilty of doing that. For my TR6, for example, I bought a stainless steel kit for probably about $300 or $400 US, which is about $600 Canadian. So in this case, I'm a little bit more budget friendly, let's say, and I'm redoing a lot of the fasteners myself. So it takes a lot of time to do this. You know, if you add up the number of fasteners that I've cleaned up since the beginning of this project, I can just imagine how many hours that would be. Alright guys, we'll continue on. Just wanted to make a quick note of that. Alright guys, here's where the alternator mounting bracket goes. So we're just about to ready to affix that to the block. There's the fasteners there that we just cleaned up. So we'll tighten those down and we'll call that good. We'll move on to the next thing. Alright guys, next thing we're going to install is the engine lifting eye or hook, whatever you want to call it. That actually just installs here on the front of the block, just something like that. So we'll grab the fasteners for that, clean them up, and install that. Alright guys, we're going to move on to installing our new spin-on oil filter adapter, and this is simply for ease of changing the oil filter. Here is the old style. For those of you who are not familiar, it's a cartridge style, and it's notorious for when you try to, it's mounted on the side of the block like that, and it's notorious for when you go to change the oil out that it just gets oil everywhere. So it's sort of an upgrade to go to the spin-on style. It uses a normal spin-on cartridge to do your oil filter changes. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to follow the instructions. It's pretty simple. Oil up the O-rings. The square grooved ring goes into the block. This flat ring goes on the inside here. It's also oiled. And then the nut is torqued down to a specific, I have to look up the torque value. And then of course you add the spin-on the end. I'll show it to you once it's installed on the block. Alright guys, I'm trying to get away from assuming that you don't want me to show things, but I know there are guys out there maybe who are doing this for a first time and want a little tutorial and might find this segment of video. So let's do it from scratch, even though it might seem simple. Maybe it's simple to me, but not simple to others. So let's go ahead and get this on video while we can. Alright guys, so as mentioned, we've got the oil filter adapter here. Hopefully you can see this. Let me just flip the viewfinder around and see if I can see if I've got you in shot. Okay, so there is the spin-on adapter. So here is the square section, what are you going to call this, O-ring, basically. So what this does, so you can see, I don't know if you can see it, but I've oiled this. So this goes in the groove here on the block. So just put it in, make sure it's in the groove, all the way around. Make sure it's not twisted or turned. Should fit in there pretty nicely. Alright, so that's in. Next step is to take the other little gasket, so the flat gasket. So the flat gasket, see this recess here, this is the piece that you're going to screw into the block. So in this recess here, this flat gasket goes in here. And again, just make sure it's in the recess, push it down, make sure it seals in there. And again, that's just coated with a light coating of oil, motor oil. Alright, then just pull this up to the block. Okay, and we're just going to screw this in. And probably just turn it. Be careful not to shake it around too much. You don't want that gasket to fall out. And really that's it until you get to a point where you're going to need to get a wrench on it. So just one quick note on the spin-out oil filter adapters. In some cases you'll need to clock it, and what I mean by clocking it, you may need to move it backwards a little bit, like on this type of angle. On these cars you're going to have a clutch slave cylinder that may be in your way, so sometimes you'll have to clock it back, and it depends on the length of the filter that you get. You can get a longer filter or a shorter filter, and that may depend on how you need to clock it as well. So just wanted to show you that really quickly. There is no torque value on this. I may look up the stock torque value for the canister, but the instructions just say to tighten this down until it's tight. So let me see if I can find a torque value, and we'll torque it and see if that seems like it's going to be enough to secure this in place. Okay, the stock filter is 20 foot-pounds torque. So let's see how I did here on my tightening. There you go, 20 foot-pounds. That seems to be okay. It's maybe a little more torque than is required. You remember that the stock filter housing is steel and this is aluminum. So anyway, 20 foot-pounds seems to feel okay without stressing it too much. So we'll leave it there. All right, on to the next thing. All right, good morning, guys. Tuesday, August the 11th, 2020, and just coming up to about 7 a.m. So it looks like the Flywheel ferry came overnight and dropped me off a later flywheel for my TR250 project. So we're going to take that up to the machine shop this morning and see if they can reface this for me in a timely fashion, and we'll let you know what happens. Alright guys, Tuesday evening, and just out in the garage doing a quick power hour, just about 8:30, and I got my new flywheel back today, or my new used flywheel. So I dropped it off at the machine shop this morning, and I managed to pick it up this afternoon on my way home from work. So here is the new TR6. So this is a late TR6 flywheel in comparison to the TR250, TR5, early TR6 up to about 1970 flywheel. And you can see the differences visually, I'm hoping, just from the appearance. You can see how dished the later TR6 is versus the early. So that's the front side, and you can see how elevated the ring gear is from sitting flat on the deck. comparison wise. Let me flip them over so you can see the back side. So a little less of a perceptible difference on the back side, but obviously the right side still the later TR6 one, and here is the early 250 one. And there is a little bit of difference when you look more closely here on the back side. It's sort of dished inwards a lot more, stepped in more than this one. So there is, and you can obviously see the difference in the height of the flanges here that made up to the crankshaft. So there's a visual difference between the two flywheels. So I thought I'd just take a quick video of that before we go ahead and stick this on the car, although I'm waiting for a bushing for this one. So once I get the bushing, I'll be able to fit it onto the crank. I have done a dry fit without the bushing, and it does work. The only thing I'm concerned about is this bushing that's already in here, which I think shouldn't be there. Now, I've done a little bit of research. I did find one discussion thread on another forum the gentleman described the exact same thing. He had a pilot bushing in the end of the crank, and he also had one in his flywheel, and apparently it didn't cause him an issue. Now, I have done also some other reading that says that this potentially, from what my understanding is, that the GT6s actually had a crank with a pilot bushing in the end of the crank as well. So who knows, this could be a GT6 crank. It's a mystery. Alright, one more thing. If you recall, yesterday I installed the spin-on oil filter adapter. On my way back from picking up the flywheel today, I stopped at my local Napa and I picked up this gold filter. It might be made of gold. It was $15. But anyway, it's the Napa 1516. So Napa Gold filter 1516 that I use for the spin-on oil conversion. Alright guys, there's the new filter installed in the car. Kind of matches the engine with that black casing. Anyway, we will fill this with oil actually before we go ahead and start the car. So I've just got it on there loosely at the moment. But we will fill the filter with oil, which will help at the startup point as well to get the oil pressure up a little more quickly. So just wanted to show you that quickly. And I also wanted to mention, so one of the other problems now that I've got to deal with since I've got this new flywheel is that the starter that I bought, so this is a high torque starter, I bought this from British Parts Northwest in 2017. I started stockpiling parts for this car. So unfortunately this high torque starter is not going to work for the later TR6 flywheel. So I'm now in the market now for a new high torque starter, which is probably going to set me back about $190 US plus shipping. So it's probably going to be about 300 Canadian so before it arrives to my door. So just another little bit of a setback and some more dollars than I need to throw at this car in order to fix the crankshaft issue. Alright guys, that's it for tonight. We'll probably upload this so we can start fresh tomorrow. We have a Lynn coming to the garage tomorrow. We're going to work on the cam timing tomorrow, so we'll probably get out here after work and we'll start another video series on the cam timing. And just a little preview for tomorrow. Out with the old and in with the new.